Susan Solovic. Thanks for joining me. I'm so excited. This is the first in a series of webcasts I'm going to be doing just like this on the 1% Edge, how you can build innovation into your company's DNA. It's a process that I've created, and it'll be coming out this January in my new book, The 1% Edge, Small Changes That Guarantee Relevancy and Sustain Success. So I'm just so happy that you're here for this first event. It's great to be with you. And I love this platform because you know what? In addition of you seeing me, I can see you and you get to ask some questions. Brad, why don't you jump in there and tell them how they can do that?
Sure. Thank you everybody for joining. And like Susan said, when you have a question, you can either use the chat by typing in through the chat icon below, or you can click participants, and then you should see a little raise hand button. That'll send me a little notification that just lets me know you want to ask your question live. And then once we get to Q&A too, if you don't want to do any of that and you just raise your hand on your screen, I'll pull you up that way. Susan, I will throw it back to you to get started.
Great. And by the way, thanks for all of you who are watching us on Facebook Live. I appreciate you joining. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions as well. Brad's going to read me your questions. And before we get started, I want to say a big special thanks to my sponsors, the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. If you're not familiar with SBE Council, you should. It's SBEcouncil.org. They're a great nonpartisan advocates for small business owners in Washington on Capitol Hill, helping our voices to be heard. They also do a lot of great research. And of course, I want to thank the American Management Association and Amicom Books, my publisher, for sponsoring today's event. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's get this party started. Here is something I'm going to tell you, and you're not going to like it. No matter where you are in business, no matter how successful you are right now, no matter what industry you're in, no matter how much of a competitive edge you think you have, you are at risk of going out of business right this very minute. Think about it. Think about how many brands that we love, that we've known for years, that have simply gone to the wayside. In fact, only 71 of the original Fortune 500 companies exist today. I mean, think about it. Companies like Linens and Things and Circuit City and Radio Shack, Blockbuster, I mean, they're all gone. And why? Why are they gone? It wasn't necessarily because the leaders of those companies were inept or stupid. In fact, at one point in time, those companies were all very successful. What happens is as we're growing our businesses, we get stuck in a rut. We get married to our product or service. We get married to the way we do business. We get married to our customers, our marketing, and to the people who help us run our companies. And that's problematic because in today's world, there's one thing that's for sure. It's change, and it's rapid change. And when you start telling yourself, it ain't broke, don't fix it, guess what? If it ain't broke, you need to start fixing it anyway, because tomorrow it will be. I'm going to guarantee you that the way you're doing business today isn't going to work tomorrow. It's a simple fact. So now is the time to start learning how to be innovative, to constantly be enhancing the way you're delivering your product service to your customers, to your employees, every single aspect of your business. And that's what the 1% Edge is. I'm not talking about innovation of coming up with the newest, sexiest, coolest product. I'm talking about innovation in the terms of constantly tweaking every aspect of your business so you can remain competitive in your world. So today's webcast is actually going to start with an overview of the whole 1% Edge process. As we go on to future webcasts, I'll be drilling down into more specific areas of your business so you can learn how to actually implement and execute this process into your company. But today we're going to take the big picture view, and we're going to start with step number one. Step number one of the 1% Edge process is simply to think and reflect. You've got to get away from your office. You've got to get away from your business, and you've got to take a really critical look at what you're doing right now in your company. If we weren't doing business this way today, would we do it this way? If so, why? If so, why not? It's called mindful thinking. And like I said, you can't do it while you're mired in the day-to-day task of running your business. You've got to get away. So You got to get away and you've got to start asking these critical questions. Am I targeting the right customers? Do I have the right people on my team? Is my product and service threatened by some competition that I haven't seen that's on the landscape, on the horizon? I mean, think about taxi cab drivers, right? Who would have ever thought Uber would change that industry? We didn't see it coming. So you've got to start looking at competition. You've got to look at your people. Do you have the right people in the right seats, all rowing in the right direction, helping you to reach your goals and to maintain a competitive edge? Are they innovative? Are they creative? Have you empowered them? Are they the right team? What about your infrastructure, your process, your technology? Are you leveraging the best of the best so you can be the best? That's critical. You know, lots of times I've worked with companies and they take a piece of technology and it looks good. They like the bells and whistles. They buy that technology, but nobody uses it. Why? Well, first of all, nobody's trained on it. Secondly, it doesn't talk to other aspects of their business. There's no connectivity. And actually, they end up losing productivity because people have to go back and redo what the technology was supposed to do in the first place. So those are questions you have to ask. And really, this is very, very critical. And when I do the webcast on financials, we'll really get into this, but you've got to look at your financials. You've got to be looking at a dashboard that gives you results in real-time numbers, real time. Looking at your financials once a quarter or even once a month, that's not going to do it for a business in today's marketplace that is changing so rapidly. You've got to be looking at those on a daily basis. And then you've got to start looking at what opportunities are out there. Now, this is where I say no sacred cows. None, nada. No sacred cows. You got to leave your ego at the door. There's no such thing as a dumb idea. Because here's what happens. When businesses find themselves losing ground, they rationalize, we give ourselves excuses. We give ourselves a hall pass, right? But what happens is we start throwing spaghetti up against the wall. We react. It's like, oh my gosh, what's happening to us? We got to try this. We got to try that. You hope something sticks. It's like the Keystone Cops. You know, we're running. Yep, there you go. See, everybody's chasing something, hoping that something's going to work. And fewer than 10% of companies who find themselves in this situation, like these guys, fewer than 10% are ever able to survive and turn things around. That's why you've got to look out on the horizon and think and reflect on what's happening in your business. You've got to look at what opportunities might be there. Do you see new markets? Do you see new customers? Oh, there's the sacred cow, right? No sacred cows, leave him out of the door. You can't have an ego. You've got to be willing and open. Open your mind. I always say, change your attitude, change your results. And this is the place to start, right here. Now, the second step in the 1% edge process is actually looking at all these opportunities, your risk, your people, and start to develop your plan, your ideas. What are we going to do? And you prioritize them. Now, in my companies, what I've done is I talk about above the line and below the line. So we look at priorities, we list them, what's the easiest or most profitable to implement immediately, and start listing them down to the bottom, and then draw the line and start focusing on the top 5. The bottom line is you can't do everything, right? And when you try to do too many things and you lose your focus, you're also going to lose in terms of your results. So you need to start to prioritize. This third step in the process is to think about your plan and how you're going to cut the dead weight. So the third step is cutting the dead weight. And I mean, cut the dead weight seriously. As I said, you can't be all things to all people. You can't do everything. So if you've taken a good close look at your business, you've realized that some things aren't working too well. So is there a product or service that isn't very profitable? Have you been watching your profit margins shrink? That's one of the first things to look at. And do you need to get rid of that product or service so you can focus on the things that are much more profitable for your company? So I actually suggest making a profit wheel, looking at the percentage of business that you do with each particular product or service, and then look at what the profit margin is. Now, it doesn't mean that if it has a low shrinking profit margin, that you necessarily have to cut it. But is there a way to deliver that product or service so that it is more profitable for you? Can you implement technology? Can you use less of your personnel? Can you reduce your expenses and your costs? If the answer to all those things are no, and you see the profit margin dwindling, and you've got something else that the profit margin is strong, cut the dead weight. Focus on where your strengths are, where your core competencies are, and where the market is going. You also need to look at your people. I mentioned this earlier. Do you have the right people in the right seats? One of the things that happens when we're building a business is, especially younger companies, is we build our team and we get close to people who are with us. But as your organization grows, those people may not be the right people to move on to the next level with you. You've got to be brutally honest with yourself. Do you have the right people? And are you empowering them to really take the initiative to try new things, to be creative? I know a lot of business people who are micromanagers. It's my way or the highway. So going back to that sacred cow again, no sacred cows. You want your people to feel empowered, to suggest new things, to try new things, to see if it works. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, as long as nobody died, it's not a big deal. Just ask yourself, did anybody die? No, I don't think so. That's good. So you've got your people. You want to make sure you got the right people. And I always say you want to hire smart and fire fast. If you've got the wrong people, you want to let them go quickly. And you know what? You're really doing them a favor, because if it's not a good fit for you, it's not a good fit for them. You want them to be able to flourish. And you want to look at the process and systems that you're using. Once again, are you taking advantage of the top opportunities for you to actually deliver your product and service in the most effective way? Are you using technology to your advantage? Are you using it so you're productive? That's an important part. If not, if you're using outdated systems, you can have the coolest and sexiest product in the world, but I can guarantee you, you won't be successful because your infrastructure will pull you down. And let's talk about your marketing. How many of you have people or friends who their bio picture looks like their high school graduation picture? You know what I mean? Yeah, okay. So you need to take a really good look at your marketing. When was the last time you updated it? Think about how fast the market is changing in terms of the way we engage with our customer base. It's crazy. I mean, how many of you, I wonder, are on social media and use it regularly? I certainly do. And here's a funny story about how important it is to build that engagement with your customers. And if you're not using the right marketing and you're not engaging them, it's time to cut the dead weight and move on. But just to talk about Twitter, just for 1 second. So I have a fairly large Twitter following, and I was in Washington, D.C. not too long ago, and I was getting ready to speak at an event, and a lady walks up to me. I was getting my cup of coffee, and she comes up and she starts asking me about my dogs. I love my dogs. I'm a huge dog person. Love my dogs. She asked me about my new book. She asked me a few other questions. And finally I said, you know, this is my first cup of coffee this morning, and I just can't quite place you. And she gave me a big hug and she said, oh, honey, you don't know me. I just follow you on Twitter. It's a great way for you to engage with your customers. So you have to look at your current marketing strategies and cut the dead weight of the things that aren't working for you, the things that are outdated. And finally, you've got to look at your customer segments. Are you still focused on the right customer segments? You know, think about this. How many of you had a grandfather who had a Cadillac? Remember? Yeah, Cadillac, a great luxury brand, wonderful brand of cars. But you know what happened is, as the population ages, Cadillac didn't want to be known as your grandfather's car anymore. because that wasn't reaching out to the millennials. That wasn't interesting enough to the young people that are coming up today. So they actually started to reinvent themselves. They even reinvented their logo so that they could attract a younger following. So are you still focused on the right customer base for your product or service? If not, cut the dead weight. So those are the first 3 steps. Your mindful thinking, asking those tough questions that you don't know the answers to, prioritizing the opportunities as you see them, and the third is cutting the dead weight. Cut the dead weight. And the 4th step is then to create your plan. You got to have a plan. Ideas without an action plan are worth nothing. So you've got to have a plan. But when you create your plan, here's the thing. You want to make sure you write down the assumptions that have caused you to feel the way you do when you made that plan. What were we thinking? What do we expect? What do we anticipate? What do we see? It's important to know that so that you can measure and review your results on a timely basis. So you want to create this plan and then, of course, execute on the plan. And you've got to get everybody on board. Once again, this isn't about you dictating to someone what's going to happen in your company. I certainly have been in companies before where upper management would have a meeting and it was a rah, rah, rah. We're going to be second to none. We're going to be the leaders. We're going to be creative. We're going to be innovative. And 30 days later, it was business as usual. You as the leader, the business leader, you've got to take that plan and you've got to believe in it. You've got to be committed to it and you've got to make sure your team is committed to it too. You don't want them to walk out and roll their eyes and say, oh, here we go again. It's just another flavor of the month. No, you want them to be well committed to that plan and understand what it's going to take to execute it. So the 5th step in the 1% Edge process is to review and analyze. Okay, now here's the thing. I just mentioned the plan, right? If you're in business already, you probably are so familiar with strategic plans and operating plans and they're 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Forget it. Those things are history. They don't work in today's marketplace. Think about this. Amazon just bought Whole Foods. I'm sure you saw it all in the news, right? Bought a brick and mortar Whole Foods. And at the same time, Target was working on their strategic plan to get into the food industry to compete with the Walmarts. Guess what? That business leadership at Target, they're back to the drawing board because the Amazon purchase with Whole Food, it's a game changer. That's why you can't predict the future 2 or 3 or 5 years out. You've got to build a plan that is workable in real time. So the 5th step is to review and analyze. Now, this is where you take those assumptions that you built into your plan. And I want you to understand that this is where you begin to see, as Sam Walton said, do it, try it, fix it, right? I mean, you've got to make those bold steps. And then if it ain't working, and you move on. It's got to be bold and innovative and in real time. So minimally, once a month, you've got to review that plan and your assumptions and your results. But better, look at it weekly. Think about it. Think about how fast the market is changing and how fast we get news today. Just think about how even our president and our leaders communicate with us in real time on Twitter. You have to do the same thing in your business. You've got to review those results in real time. If you're meeting your assumptions and everything's working out the way you thought it was, great, stay the course. If you're not, you're going to figure out, can we tweak this? And you make small adjustments to move forward? Or do we need to abandon this process entirely? If you abandon it, fail fast, move on. What else did you have on that list of priorities? Move another priority up and start to focus on that. And maybe those have changed somewhat. Maybe something that you thought wasn't that great of an opportunity, now you see is really a real possibility and a real opportunity. So you have to review and analyze. And the 6th step in the process is repeat from the beginning. Yeah. You go back out and you start thinking and you start looking and you analyze and you reflect. There's nothing stronger for a business than to sit back and to really exercise mindful thinking. I've read a number of books on this process, and those people who actually carve out that time to have that mindful thinking session about their personal careers, about themselves, about their business, are always more successful than those of us who don't. The key to the 1% Edge process is that it's all about being timely, being in real time, and building innovation into your business. If you're doing business the way you did yesterday, you're going backwards. If you're in the status quo, marching time, you're going backwards. You need to be in real time, changing, flexible, agile, and that's the key to the 1% Edge. So actually now, if anybody has questions, I've got some more content I can share with you, but I want to hear your questions. If you have questions, just raise your hand. Or Brad, you want to jump in and remind them how to ask questions?
Yeah, sure. So I will scan. Let me pull up gallery view here. I'll scan through, and if anyone, we would love to see your face. So if you want to unmute your video and ask your question live, I'll pull you up to ask it live. And again, you can do that by clicking the participants icon and then raise hand. Or for the people that do have their video unmuted, I'm looking right now. So if you just raise your hand on the screen, I'll unmute you. Or you can type your question in the chat as well. So any questions out there?
So let me also say this about the 1% Edge. When I talked about focusing on your opportunities, did you know that Xerox is the company that invented the first true personal computer? But here's what happened with Xerox. You see, Xerox got to be what I call fat, dumb, and happy. They dominated the copying industry in the US, and they failed to do the mindful thinking, step one. They failed to recognize that these Japanese copiers companies were going to emerge in the US and sell copiers at a much cheaper price than what Xerox could. And what happened? They started to lose their competitive edge. So they were like the Keystone Cops. They're running around doing everything they can to maintain their dominance in the copier industry. So what happened? Steve Jobs goes to Xerox. He walks in, he sees the Xerox technology, and he takes it. Yep, he took it away from Xerox. And look at what Apple did. And Steve Jobs is known as having said, they didn't realize what they had. You don't want that to happen in your business. That's why the 1% Edge process is so critical to your success. Whether you're just starting out or whether you're already established business, but constantly reviewing and recognizing what's happening in the marketplace is critical for today's success to maintain that competitive edge. I'll also share with you, I have a podcast series on iTunes called The 1% Edge, and I've had the honor of interviewing some amazing, successful game changers on my podcast. And the funny thing is, when I talk about mindful thinking, they tend to be real zealots when it comes to adventure. They climb mountains, they hike through jungles, they jump out of airplanes. They do all of these sorts of things in order to keep their mind alert, to give them a new perspective. Now, I'm certainly not going to jump out of an airplane or climb a mountain, but I think it's important for all of us to be constantly learning, constantly trying new things, constantly being present in the real time. And I think that gives us a new perspective. If you ever watched the movie Working Girl, Melody Griffith comes up with this idea for a merger between two broadcast giants. And when her boss, Sirgani Weaver, comes back, she tries to take credit for it. And they ask Melody Griffith, where did you come up with the idea? And she says, well, there was this society column and then this other column, and I put two and two together. And she said, you never know where the big ideas are going to come from. So staying on top of things, looking at what's happening in the world, not just in your industry, but in other industries. When you're doing the mindful thinking, if you think about the fact that sometimes you might have an idea that comes from another industry, somebody's doing something well. that you like, that you can mimic and do in your business. I'm not saying to copy anybody's intellectual property or to steal their ideas, but you might find some way that they're serving their market that would also work in your market. It's a good way to find ideas and opportunities for your business. So you guys are awfully quiet. I really wanted to talk to you. If you have a question, just let me know. So these webcasts are meant to be about a half an hour. I want to keep them short because I know you all have busy times. The next webcast is going to be on leadership, and I look forward to that. We'll be talking about how to apply the 1% Edge process to your leadership in your company. And I really hope that you'll join us. I hope you'll also look at my book. It's called The 1% Edge, and you can already pre-order it on Amazon. Or there's a cover, right? You can pre-order it on Amazon, or you can go to susansolovic.com/new book and learn more about it. I'll be sending out updates and little teasers and sneak peeks, so you can get all of that. Also, if you go onto my website, susansolovic.com, you can sign up for my free newsletter, which goes out once a week, and you can get a copy of my free ebook, the Smart Marketing Strategies for Small Business. And we'll also send you 66 great ideas to build brand buzz, all right there by registering online to join my database and receive my newsletter. So I really thank, again, my sponsors, the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. If you don't know them, go on to sbecouncil.org. It's a great organization. They're doing lots of great work for us in Washington. Also, Amicom, my publisher, and the American Management Association. Great resources for businesses of all sizes at the American Management Association. One more time, call for questions.
I am not seeing anything yet, Susan.
Okay, all right. Everybody's quiet, I guess. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining me, and I will be checking in. If you have questions, you can contact me on Facebook, on Twitter, go through my website. I'm always good about trying to help you find your answers. If I don't know the answer, I'll find someone who does. You take care, and everybody have a fantastic week.